Here we have a Homelite mini tiller 2-stroke 26 cc's that's been sitting for a few years now, and we're gonna attempt to start it. Actually spend the last couple of years outdoors, so before we try to start it, let's check if it's got a spark or not. I'm gonna remove the spark plug. Looks like it got spark, but it's weak. Well, spark is better than no spark. With reinstalled spark plug, let's go ahead and check the carburetor. So there are two fuel lines to the carburetor. One of them is feed to the carburetor, and the other one is return from the carburetor into the fuel tank. So now which one is which? The best ways to figure out is to open up the cap on the fuel tank itself and take a look inside. The long line, one with the filter at the end of it, is actually the fuel feed to the carburetor. The other one, the short one, is actually the return from the carburetor. Now we know when we take a look from the outside, the bottom fuel line is the feed to the carburetor. So that comes usually to the bottom of the carburetor itself. The top one is usually the return line, what we proved when we looked inside the fuel tank. So with this, we're going to connect our GumBuster to the feed to the carburetor, which is the bottom line. Okay, we're going to keep the return line on the carburetor itself. We're going to connect the GumBuster to the feed to the carburetor line. So we're going to take the GumBuster. We're going to connect the purge valve to the GumBuster. So we're just going to connect it to the carburetor. So now, before we actuate the GumBuster, we want to start pumping the primer valve on the carburetor itself. While we pump the primer valve, we are going to actuate the GumBuster as well. So let's go do it. This way, we got the fuel flow throughout the carburetor, and the excess fuel just drained back into the tank. Now we're going to let it sit for 20 minutes. After 20 minutes soak time, before we disconnect the GumBuster from the carburetor, we're going to give it one more shot. So let's start pumping and pressurize the carburetor one more time. With this, we removed all the gum that loosened up during those 20 minutes inside the carburetor and pushed most of it through the return line inside the fuel tank. With this, we can start the engine now on GumBuster only. Now we can disconnect the GumBuster from the carburetor. Without connecting the fuel line back to the feed barb on the carburetor, we're going to attempt to start the engine on the GumBuster left inside the carburetor. So now we're going to attempt to start the engine on the GumBuster only. And there he goes. He just fired and he died because he ran out of the fuel. We're going to connect the main fuel line to the carburetor, and we're going to add fuel inside the tank. Now if we take a look on the inside of the fuel tank, this is the gum that actually was inside the carburetor, and it's been accumulating for years. This is the gum that actually plugs up all the very small pores, all the small jets inside the carburetor itself. So let's go ahead and clean up the fuel tank. Yes, this is the gum that came out of the carburetor, reason why we couldn't start the carburetor in the very beginning. So looking inside now, it looks much better and it's clean to put some fresh fuel in it. Let's go ahead and prime it.